have an update of day 8 in the Patrick Frazee trial, Cripple Creek, Colorado. We will discuss this in our live tonight. So if you want to view this, so you catch up if you haven't, we know that cameras are not allowed in this courtroom. And so the information we get is very late in the day by the time we have it all. And so it's good to discuss it in the evening. And I hope you'll join us. So let's look what day 8 brought us. At 8:30 a.m., Judge Sells returned to the courtroom and prosecutors called Stephanie Howerton to the witness stand. She's been an office manager for Teller County Waste for 2 years. She said she has records for trash pickup at Kelsey Berreth's house. Prosecutor Beth Reed showed a printout of the trash schedule on a slideshow in the courtroom. Typically, Berreth's trash was picked up on Friday, but with the Thanksgiving holiday, it was pushed back to Saturday. According to the schedule, trash hadn't been put out that week or the following week. Howerton said trash wasn't picked up from her residence until December 21st, 2018. The state then called Jennifer Barks, who worked as a human resources director for 7 years at DOS Aviation, including in November and December of 2018. Barks said she knew Berreth through the hiring process and noted her because she had very few female pilots. She said she was excited when women were hired as pilots. Barks worked alongside Melissa RUSS, her human resources business partner, who also worked with Berreth. Russ was interviewed by the prosecutors after Barks. Barks said she assisted Berreth with leaving work when she took a leave of absence in August of 2018. Barks confirmed the Woodland Park Police Department contacted her in December of 2018. She knew about the investigation at the time, so she anticipated the phone call, she said. She recalled that police asked about employment dates and benefits and wanted to understand how benefits would change for someone moving from full-time to part-time. Berreth moved to part-time work in the fall of 2018. She told police that Frazee was Berreth's emergency contact. On December 3rd, a day after Kelsey Berreth was reported missing, Barks called Frazee to ensure he knew she was missing. She said Frazee asked if someone could take the baby, which prompted Barks to ask about Kaylee, the 1-year-old girl Frazee and Berreth had in October of 2017. Frazee said the baby was fine. During the conversation, Frazee claimed that the Woodland Park Police Department kept calling him, so he put Barks on hold multiple times. When they were able to talk, Frazee said he and Berreth had broken up because she wanted space, Barks said. She said that he also told her that Berreth had a drinking problem and went to rehab. Barks said she challenged him on this comment because pilots at DOS Aviation work in close quarters and a coworker would have spoken up. In court, she said Frazee didn't respond to this. She said she explained that Berreth had taken a leave of absence in August of 2018 for a medical reason. Frazee never offered any speculations on what happened to Berreth, Barks said. Prosecutor Jennifer Veman asked if Frazee said anything about Berreth running off to get herself healed up, which Barks confirmed she did recall. When Veman asked about the alcohol abuse that Frazee had mentioned, Barks said she was never notified about Berreth having any issues with alcohol. After Berreth went missing, Barks looked at Berreth's life insurance policy and noticed that Berreth didn't have a beneficiary listed. Frazee had been listed as her beneficiary previously, but DOS Aviation was switching ownership and therefore benefits at the time, and she had not yet completed the necessary paperwork. DOS Aviation was acquired by L3 Harris. During the cross-examination, Ashley Fridovich Porter confirmed that Barks always takes notes during phone calls. But Porter pointed out that she told special agents that she didn't take notes on the call with Frazee. The jury asked if Berreth was ever randomly tested for drugs or alcohol, and Barks said no. The state then called Barks' business partner, Melissa RUSS, to the stand. RUSS now works in human resources for a government contractor. In her position, she said she took care of employee issues, hiring, and helped them with benefits. RUSS said she hired Berreth in September of 2017, and she was required to take a drug and alcohol screening at the time. She worked with Berreth through her orientation, and when she took leave for her baby in October of 2017, she also helped Berreth transition back to work after her maternity leave. RUSS said that she helped Berreth with her benefits as well. In November of 2018, she said they had discussions about moving to a part-time position and how it would impact Berreth's benefits. Berreth started some paperwork in November of 2018 for this, RUSS said. Part-time employees don't get benefits at DAS Aviation. And she notified Berreth via email of this change because she assumed Berreth wouldn't want to lose her medical benefits for her and her daughter. Berreth was concerned about not having medical insurance for her daughter, RUSS said. Ultimately, she decided the benefits Berreth had would stay in place through the end of 2018. She said she doesn't recall if she was able to tell Berreth about this update since it was approved after Thanksgiving. The defense did not have any questions, but a juror asked why Berreth wanted to move to part-time status. RUSS said she never got a specific answer, but that she'd only inquired about going part-time after returning from maternity leave. Veman confirmed it was not common for flight instructors to switch between full and part-time. ANISSA Smith was the next witness the state called to the witness stand. She has lived in Florissant her whole life and used to rodeo with Frazee. She said she's known him since she was 8 years old. Smith said Frazee leased land from her grandparents for his cattle. He also would shoe and trim their horses. She said she was sometimes on the property when he was working. Veman asked Smith about any times when Frazee mentioned he had a daughter. Smith said Frazee did not mention Kaylee before this, and said she thinks he first mentioned Kaylee in October of 2018. She said she remembered that she was shocked and tried to ask more about Kaylee. Frazee told her he had picked her up at the hospital on the day she was born, she said. He said that her mom, Kelsey Berreth, told him to come pick her up. She said he had talked about Berreth while they were shoeing horses, so she was familiar with her name. When Frazee told Smith about his daughter, he also claimed that he had full custody of the child. She recalled that Frazee had told her Berreth had signed over her rights when Kaylee was born. He told her that Berreth wouldn't reach out for weeks or months at a time to check on Kaylee. She said she met Kaylee when Frazee brought her to Smith's grandparents' home in early November of 2018. She said she didn't see any signs of abuse or neglect at the time. Smith said she was first interviewed by a district attorney's office investigator on December 21st. The state then recalled up former Woodland Park Police Department Commander Christopher Adams. He also testified on the third day of the trial. He now works for the CBI. He was the lead investigator with the police department on this case. Prosecutor Beth Reed asked him to discuss the efforts the department made to find Berreth after she was reported missing. Adams listed them out. They sent out press releases to the media to spread the word. Berreth's family met with the press to explain the situation and describe Kelsey Berreth. Police looked at bank records, cell phone records, and social media records. Police searched Berreth's townhome. Police opened up a tip line which received between 500 and 600 tips, and many were followed up on. Some people did not call back. Some calls were from psychics, he said. Adams said, according to Kenny's testimony, Frazee had discussed putting Berreth's remains in a landfill or a river, which led investigators to search the Midway landfill near Fountain. Adams said they didn't find anything substantial at the landfill, and that search ended in mid-April. Reed then asked if Adams knew anything about Evraz Steel, a steel manufacturer, and Adams said he learned of the name about a month ago in relation to the silver trash can that was found near the trough where Frazee allegedly burned Berreth's body. A ranch hand previously described the trash can and its placement on the 5th day of the trial. Adams also confirmed that he was not aware of Frazee Berreth's child custody exchanges at the police station in Woodland Park. He said they never received calls for service from either of them before, he said. Throughout the investigation, he never found information to suggest that Kelsey Berreth was alive, he said. Reed then asked about the gun that Berreth had in her possession before her disappearance. Frazee is accused of giving it to Kenny to take back with her to Idaho, where she allegedly gave it to her friend Mark Pearson to hold on to. Adams said they were able to collect the gun from Pearson and traced it. They found the original purchaser was Berreth, and that she bought it in 2014. The state then recalled another witness who had already testified, Stephanie Courtney. She's an investigator with the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office. She previously testified about surveillance video showing Frazee and his truck at a Walmart and ATM, as well as Berreth at the Woodland Park safely. She was also asked with getting buccal swabs from Kaylee on December 21st, which Courtney said was not an easy thing to do. She never had to take a buccal swab from a 1-year-old before. I think she thought I was going to give her candy, so she bit down on it and didn't want to let go, Courtney said in court. She turned the sample over to the Woodland Park Police Department, which eventually gave it to the CBI. Robert Hill was the next witness the prosecutors called up to the stand. He's a flight instructor at L3 Harris, which acquired DOS Aviation. He said he's worked as a flight instructor since February 2017 and got his pilot's license in 2010. He started at DOS in November 2017 and went through the training program, which he said requires long hours and studying 12 hours a day. He called it intensive and the hardest program he's ever done. Hill said he got to know Berreth through the training program, but knew her from a previous job at Springs Aviation out of Falcon, which is northeast of Colorado Springs. They went through part of the program together, the spring and summer of 2018. He remembered talking about their time at Springs Aviation, which they enjoyed but didn't get many students to work with. Hill said that they were fairly close, but not romantically. He said he thought Frazee was Berreth's husband and that she had talked about him at work. He knew Frazee was Kaylee's father, he said. Berreth had mentioned that she didn't get along well with Frazee's mother, Sheila Frazee. Once, she came into work and seemed stressed, and when Hill asked why, Berreth replied that Frazee had been acting like a dick all day. Hill said he didn't know much about Berreth and Frazee's custody arrangement, but he knew that Frazee brought Kaylee to work with him. Berreth never mentioned giving up custody of her, Hill said. He met Kaylee a few times when Berreth would bring her into work when she was about a year old. He said she slept most of the time and he didn't see any indication that she was being abused. On November 20th, 2018, 2 days before Thanksgiving, Reed and Berreth had dinner together at Chili's. They talked about work and their Thanksgiving plans, he said. Hill asked if she would bring Frazee to the company's Christmas party, and Berreth said no because Frazee didn't like wearing khakis or slacks. He thought this was odd. Hill said when Berreth came into work one time, she said a random woman had come to her house with coffee. He recalled talking with Berreth about that strange encounter. Hill said He didn't remember if Berreth told him that she drank the coffee. In a previous testimony, Kenny had said she brought Berreth a coffee that was supposed to have something in it that would kill her per Frazee's request. Kenny testified that she didn't follow through with this plan, but did give Berreth an untouched coffee from Starbucks. In August of 2018, Berreth took time off to go to a stress rehab facility, Hill said. He didn't remember how long she was gone. When asked, Hill said he had no indication that Berreth was using drugs or alcohol, and the time he got to know her, she never drank, he said. When he said this, Frazee scribbled notes on paper in the courtroom. During the cross-examination, defense attorney Porter asked for more details on their relationship, and Hill confirmed their friendship grew as they worked together. He said he assumed Berreth and Frazee were married because Berreth told people they were. He confirmed he found out later that wasn't true. Prosecutors called CAROLYN Sharp to the witness stand next. She is a flight instructor at DOS and has worked there for 4 years. She said DOS provides initial flight training for active U.S. Air Force pilots. They have about 200 students now, with more on the way, and they fly anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day with the student, she said. They typically spend about 3 hours with each student, depending on the mission that day. She said it is common for them to fly multiple times with the same student. The instructor and student are in close quarters, especially in the plane, and they have call signs. Sharp said hers is Razor, which is a play on her last name. She said she can tell what students had for breakfast, if they have alcohol issues, if they haven't done their laundry, and more. They are that close during the training. She said she got to know Berreth through work. She offered Berreth her guest room so she could stay there during the week and not commute every day. Sharp said new hire training takes extra work for a civilian who doesn't come from the U.S. Air Force training. When she first took the job, Berreth took up Sharp's offer and stayed with her during the week. She'd go home on weekends. Sharp said she knew Berreth lived around Woodland Park or Florissant, and said Berreth was pregnant at this time and knew Frazee as her boyfriend. When Berreth was staying with Sharp, she'd call Frazee almost every night, Sharp said. She said she didn't eavesdrop on their calls, so she didn't know what they talked about. Sharp said she noted changes in Berreth's body language after these calls. It seemed that things were not okay, Sharp said. When she was asked about it, Berreth was quiet and would say she didn't want to bring Sharp into it. Berreth briefly mentioned Frazee wasn't treating her well at one point, Sharp said. She stayed in Sharp's guest room during the work week for about 6 weeks. At one point, Berreth had to stop training because she couldn't comfortably sit in the cockpit with her pregnancy. Sharp said Berreth ended her training just before the second part of that instruction. After Kaylee was born and Berreth had returned to work, Sharp saw Berreth almost daily. Sharp kept a photo of Kaylee from when she was born on her fridge, she said. Berreth talked about the newborn all the time. Sharp met Kaylee several times when they were doing administrative duties at work, she said. Berreth had called her beforehand to make sure it was okay to bring Kaylee into work, and Sharp had replied that it was fine, as long as she didn't mind others holding her newborn. She described Kaylee as a beautiful, well-behaved, and happy baby. She didn't notice any signs of abuse. Berreth loved being a mom, Sharp said. What a woman of strength to be able to do that, Sharp said. I don't know if I could. Prosecutor Veman asked if Sharp ever had concerns about Berreth drinking or using drugs, and Sharp said no. She added that she never saw any signs of that, only stress tied to being a new mother working in a high-pressure job. Would Kelsey have ever left Kaylee, Veman asked? No, Sharp replied. She said Berreth was private, quiet, reserved, but sweet during the whole time she knew her. I always really liked her, she said. Court broke for recess at 10 a.m. Prosecutors called two of Berreth's co-workers to the stand after the morning recess at about 10:18 a.m. Peter SERGEJEV, a flight instructor at DOS Aviation who worked with Berreth, testified that he was close with Berreth and they talked often, venting to each other and having coffee from time to time. Before Thanksgiving, Berreth told Peter that she didn't have many plans for the holiday and would maybe make a turkey, he said. Peter said he met Kaylee 2 times and didn't notice anything out of the ordinary about the child. Berreth would share updates about her daughter growing up and learning to crawl and told Peter that she liked being a mother. He said Berreth had told him about going to the rehab facility in August of 2018. Frazee's attorneys declined to cross-examine Peter and he was excused after just several minutes on the stand. MARYAK, the chief pilot for initial training at DOS Aviation, testified that Berreth had successfully completed the DOS training program. He said most instructors have 20 years of U.S. Air Force experience and even they call it grueling. He said he had never had any concerns that Berreth was abusing alcohol or drugs. DOS instructors specifically look for those types of issues, Mark said. Mark said Berreth told him that her leave of absence from work in August 2018 was a rest program for possible chronic fatigue. When she returned to work about a week or 2 later, she seemed more rested, Mark said. He said that they regularly remind their pilots how important a good night of sleep is. He last saw Berreth on November 21st, a day she flew, and he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, he said. He said he believed she was scheduled to fly the following Monday, November 26th. On December 2nd, the day Berreth's mother called Woodland Park requesting a welfare check for her daughter, Mark tried calling Berreth 3 times. She didn't answer, he said. Frazee's attorneys also declined to cross-examine Mark, and he was excused after about 10 minutes on the stand. Lindsay ROUP, a forensic serologist for the CBI, testified about the DNA evidence collected from Berreth's townhome and how the items were collected. She said she examines fluid like blood or semen, which is separate than DNA analysis. ROUP said the toilet in the home tested positive for blood, along with other areas of the bathroom, swabs from the wall, under the towel rack, the sink, the side of the tub, and the door. The tests of other items, a metal file, the inside of the washer, and a bottle of bleach did not indicate the presence of blood. The court broke for an early lunch around 11:30. Testimony was expected to resume around 12:30 p.m. Before everyone left, Judge Sells said he will meet with both attorneys to discuss an upcoming witness off the record. The early afternoon testimony centered on the blood discovered inside Berreth's townhome and who it belonged to. Sue Gorney, the previous owner of Berreth's townhome, took the stand after court resumed on Wednesday afternoon. Gorney testified that she had lived in the townhome alone for 26 years and sold it to Berreth on May 11th of 2018. Prosecutor Dan May asked Gorney if she ever cut herself inside the home, and Gorney said yes, explaining that her skin cuts easily if she knocks into things around the house. She said this happened especially when she was moving out of the home last year. Gorney testified that she remembered wiping up a drop of blood, but not a lot. Her skin was too thin for Band-Aids, so she let her cuts air dry, and blood would sometimes drip in the house. Gorney said she moved out of the home by the end of April and had vacuumed and mopped the floors and wiped down the walls, cabinets, and appliances. Frazee's attorneys did not question Gorney. Dr. Diane France, a forensic anthropologist, was called to the stand as an expert in forensic anthropology. France said authorities had contacted her hundreds of times over the years for help on cases. Her area of expertise is helping to determine whether remains are human or not. In the Berreth case, NecroSearch International, the company that helped search a landfill for Berreth's body, contacted France. She volunteered and was assigned to analyze anything that could be possible human remains. France said hundreds of bones were found, but many were chicken bones and none were human. The CBI also contacted France in the case, asking her to examine a possible human tooth fragment that was found on the property where Berreth was believed to be killed. France took pictures of the tooth and testified that it certainly looked like a tooth. She said she wasn't sure if it had belonged to a human. Prosecutors then handed France the pictures of the tooth, which appeared to be broken. France said she went through her extensive remains collection and determined that the tooth was consistent with a human tooth. Frazee attorney Adam Steigerwald cross-examined France and referenced that she had said she was 80% confident it was a human tooth. France agreed, but said she did not like putting a percentage on it. She said a DNA analysis of the tooth could raise her confidence from 80 to 100%. France testified that the broken tooth appeared to be a fracture, but she could not tell whether the two tooth fragments were from the same tooth. Prosecutors asked France if there was anything inconsistent with a human tooth in the fragment she saw. She said no. Caitlin Rogers, a forensic scientist with the CBI, who specializes in DNA analysis, testified about the evidence items that were tested at the CBI's Pueblo lab. Rogers used what was believed to be Berreth's toothbrush and mouthguard to build a DNA profile for Berreth. She used buccal swabs to obtain a profile from Frazee and Gorney, the previous townhome resident. In the analysis of the blood found on the side of Berreth's bathtub, Rogers said the testing showed it to be a mixture of two people, but the blood was much more likely, 46 septillion times more likely, to be Berreth and an unknown individual than two unknown individuals. Rogers also said it was 100,000 times more likely to be Gorney and an unknown person than two unknown people. When asked if it was fair to say that Berreth was the main contributor to the blood sample, Rogers said yes. The blood sample from the bathroom toilet was at least 108 septillion times more likely to be from Berreth than someone else. All of the genetic material in the single source sample was consistent with Berreth, Rogers said. The same high likelihood was applied to the blood sample found on the front fireplace and on the baby gate in the home. Each sample was 100 septillion times more likely to be from Berreth than someone else, Rogers said. Court broke after Rogers' testimony and was scheduled to resume shortly before 3 p.m. After the break, Rogers' testimony continued. She said Berreth's likely DNA was found alongside the positive blood samples in the home. Prosecutors then returned to the possible tooth fragment found on the Frazee property. Rogers said she analyzed the fragment, which tested negative for blood and saliva, but a DNA test detected human DNA and not from a male. She tried to develop a DNA profile from the fragment, but there wasn't enough DNA available. Prosecutors also asked Rogers about a sample of hay from Frazee's property. The hay tested negative for blood and did not detect human DNA. In further questioning about the sample found inside the Berreth home, Rogers said she tested one sample from the hardwood floor in the living room for DNA. The analysis showed a mix of 3 contributors, including at least one male, Rogers said. She went on to say that it was at least 9.3 quadrillion times more likely that the DNA came from Berreth and two others than 3 unknown people. It was at least 2,200 times more likely that the DNA came from Frazee and 2 others than 3 unknown people. Moderate support for Frazee being there, Rogers said. There was also a high likelihood, 2.6 trillion times more likely, that the sample came from Gorney and 2 others than from 3 unknown people. When Rogers tested the possibility of Berreth, Frazee, and Gorney all being there, it was successful, Rogers said. The trial will resume at 8:30 a.m. Thursday. 4th Judicial District Attorney Dan May said he expects the prosecution will be able to wrap their witnesses up on Thursday. One witness who will arrive in Colorado from out of the state on Thursday morning is their second to last witness, May said. At the latest, they will rest their case Friday morning, he said. Defense attorney Adam Steigerwald said he also anticipates closing statements on Friday afternoon after their witnesses. When Judge Sells asked how much time they'll need for closing statements, May said about 30 minutes for the prosecution, and Steigerwald said an hour for the defense.